Alex, you're live.
Just barely.
Here's what I like about how everything played out this morning. Is that I sent you a DM, no response. Although the last time we talked about this, let's be clear, we were both intoxicated at the very end of PAX just before you left the last night and then had to get up early to go to a flight. And we sort of agreed, hey, let's maybe do this on Tuesday morning. And I remember doing that, but then also this morning realized that maybe he didn't. That would be a reasonable response to have when all of this happened.
So the fun part of that is that I have no recollection of that conversation whatsoever, but I knew we were doing a show, and I still somehow overslept regardless. So all of that combined.
So I DM you, no response. I was like, okay, whatever. Like, it's right after PAX, Labor Day. Everyone is just exhausted. No big deal. And then I texted you, no response. Then I was like, oh, okay, maybe I might have to like push this back or cancel it. And it was like, no big deal. Maybe he just didn't remember. So in the moment, I take the step to inform the readers, the viewers, that hey, it's going to be delayed or it might not happen. I'll let you know. No big deal. That is the moment that you responded in a public fashion. Like that is the way you got back to me. Was that like you were finally checking your Twitter and then like oh. Well, you posted that like. Honestly, the very second I had just finished getting out of the shower and had ran up to my computer, and I see that, like, that's the top message on my thing, and I'm like, nope, not letting this happen. So I didn't even see your DM or your text until after I saw that. That's great.
Sorry.
That's could not have been a better way.
Wake up, Alex.
Just hit all of them at once. I'm forgetting.
Yeah.
I didn't put the.
Nah, I'm not gonna go there.
I didn't put the promo on the front page. So I'm doing
No one knows we're doing this except the like 500 people that are already
our loyal.
Yes, the loyal audience, people
who knows what's up. So how we talked about this very briefly before we started, but how are you like physically feeling after PAX?
Fine, actually. I think this month of traveling finally kind of caught up with me this weekend when I got back, because I was just a wreck when I got home. But unfortunately, I didn't have like another terrible like 7-hour layover or whatever or delay. But yesterday, I just didn't get off the couch. I just laid around and did nothing. I didn't feel sick or anything. I just felt like totally worn down. And so I slept probably a solid 10.5 hours last night.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah, it wasn't really what I was going for. I'd actually meant to set my alarm for like 9, but I didn't do that because I'm an idiot. And so with that in mind, otherwise I feel fine. I'm actually quite perky this morning. I'm in good shape. I imagine in like 2 hours, my body will suddenly be like, "Oh, you slept way too much. You're done for today." And
the idiots are you and I, because Vinny is the one that he took this week off. Like taking the week off after an event is absolutely the way to do it. Because even though we didn't really do a whole lot like traditional work-wise at PAX, like it's still exhausting in a whole different sort of way, because you're out late, you're talking all day and all night, and then if you're on panels, like that's physically and mentally exhausting in its own way. And this PAX in particular was way more taxing for a lot of those for those reasons that are always taxing. Way more so this year than it ever has before. But I will say, huge props to everyone that we met up at PAX. Everyone was very considerate, given how awkward this year was for us, given the events this summer. But by and large, everyone was very, very cool and very nice and very considerate. And it was definitely, I think, a good thing for everyone to kind of be around there and around everyone, and it ended up being a ton of fun. And I think not the awkward thing that it easily could have turned into when you just don't know how things like this are going to go.
Yeah, I mean, this was one of those PAXs where it was like, I mean, it's just straight up. It's our first without Ryan. We kind of didn't really know what we were getting into with the panel necessarily. We knew we were going to have some people up, and that was kind of about it, really. I mean, you had at least a few like interview appointments and things that you had set up, but I think most of us were just kind of wandering around aimlessly, like I think most of us were kind of walking around like we were, running around through the rubble after a bomb had gone off. Like we kind of didn't really know what we were doing. We weren't really sure what was going on around us. We were just kind of there, sort of hoping that someone would catch our attention and that would, help us keep it together. But, all things considered, between just people being super cool, the show being, always a pretty well-oiled machine, and there being actually a lot of really, cool games, fun stuff to play and check out there, I would say this is probably one of the better PAXs I've been to in a good long while.
Yeah, and it always is, and it is definitely given that there's no giant bomb con, at least not yet, that having a chance to see the people that sort of make this all possible for us to sit here and jabber like idiots is always a huge pleasure. But there was actually there's a fair bit of news that happened that went up on other websites.
News websites, perhaps.
Yeah, news websites, sites that take that part of their job seriously. The biggest one probably that came out, and that actually we covered in a capacity that at least I interviewed Keiji Inafune, was that not too long before our panel on Saturday afternoon, Keiji Inafune was the creator of Mega Man and was the head of Capcom R&D, sort of the face of Capcom, and a very friendly, fun face. There was very few people who met Inafune that didn't like him, but he had pretty much a kind of a pretty public falling out with Capcom. He's been very critical of Capcom and the Japanese video game industry in the last couple of years as he's gone off to start his own studio called Concept as part of more of a larger trend of Japanese developers kind of splitting off on their own, despite culturally, usually you started a company and that's where you are your whole life. And sort of the culmination of all of what he has been doing the last couple of years has kind of felt like it's been leading up to this moment where he launched a Kickstarter for Mighty Number 9? Mighty Number
9.
Which more or less might as well be called the next Mega Man. It seems to be sort of this passing of the torch, even if it's not the character Mega Man, it is the style of Mega Man, it is the structure of Mega Man of going after a set number of bosses in any order, acquiring their powers. But it does appear that it's going to be sort of an evolution of that concept. All of that aside, it is a Kickstarter project. And as of, I'm going to try and pull it up now, because they hit their goal yesterday.
Yes, they did. And I think they hit it by a decent margin already. So
900,000, and yeah, with 28 days to go, and it's only been launched a couple of days. They're at 1.26 million, which means they are definitely on track to hit. I would suspect 3 to 5 is probably.
I don't know yet. So I mean, they're definitely going to make at least a couple million on that game, and good for them. I mean, yes, like you said, it might as well have just been called Nega Man. I mean, it seems like it is pretty much the same concept, but think about all the sad Mega Man fans who have just been super sad over the last couple of years because of the treatment of that franchise and that character. Capcom's just sort of utter disinterest in it. And I kind of get why Capcom is disinterested in it. They haven't had a whole lot to do with it creatively. It just continually putting out the same stuff again and again maybe isn't working for them anymore. I don't know. I don't know what the hell Capcom's doing these days.
Well, I'm gonna get my interview with Inafune up sometime this week. One of the things that we talked about, and that was a common question in other interviews was. So I saw elsewhere people asked the legal question of like whether you are at all worried that Capcom might take any sort of legal action, and Infine's response to that was that they've taken the steps to believe they are covered, and that he kind of went a little bit further with that to say, look, I made this, I created this, it would be in their best interest to sort of kind of leave it alone. And then the other question, the question that I asked him was. At some point, Capcom's going to make a Mega Man game, or will return to that franchise in some capacity. There's just too much money to be made there, even if Inafune isn't there.
Right.
And how he would feel about that if his former employer went back to his baby and started messing around with that. And his response was pretty diplomatic in saying that, Mega Man's a big franchise, and they would be crazy not to give the fans something that would excite them and give them another Mega Man game. And he seemed at least legitimately interested, whether that's he wants to see them crash and fail, or if he would be legitimately interested in seeing some new blood on Mega Man. But I would love to see Capcom maybe assign some of its younger designers the opportunity to do something with that franchise. And in this case, we get the best of both worlds, which is Inafune going off and making his own spiritual successor and trying something new, and then potentially Capcom going to the drawing board and trying to give that a shot. I also wouldn't be surprised if they just don't even touch it, because it seems like it's not a winning proposition for Capcom.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. I think that they could very easily, if they find the right project leader for that game, they could very easily turn that into a Street Fighter 4 situation where it's a franchise you don't expect anything from, and then suddenly here's this, kind of great revival of it. But they have to have the right talent for it, and I don't know enough about what Capcom's development situation looks like to know if they have that or not. The thing I thought was kind of funny was it initially when I looked at the Kickstarter page, I was kind of like, oh Jesus, he's just making his own damn Mega Man game. I was kind of reminded a little bit of just some of this is a weird thing, but some of the Japanese wrestling games that come out over the years, because like a lot of times those games are totally license free. They will use the likenesses of real real people and copyrighted materials from all over the places. They will just change the name. And apparently the thing with Japanese copyright law is you can just do that. As you can use Japanese copyright law is a very different thing. And as long as you are changing names and it is like the name is distinctive enough that no one will specifically confuse those, you can basically use the likenesses and the visuals and a lot of the same kind of like trade dress stuff that other franchises and properties can, I guess, without any real legal hassle, at least in Japan. I don't think that works internationally, but yeah.
The Fire Pro Wrestling games, aren't they
Yes.
like famous for allowing you to basically recreate everything like to the nth degree? It's not like within spitting distance. It's like we are going to give you all the material to make the Ultimate Warrior. Don't worry about it.
But actually, and a lot of the wrestlers that were already in the game when they sold it were based on real people that looked almost identical to those real people. They just had different names. So
interesting.
I wonder if he was just kind of going off a similar kind of, because I've seen some of the character art, and some of that stuff looks kind of a lot like Mega Man, and that's not a bad thing by any stretch. I'm just wondering if he's kind of using some of that same sort of trademark law stuff to kind of get around that. But whatever, good. I'm in total support of that game.
Yeah, it look. I feel like this is sort of like putting the real test to Inafune is there are no shortage of designers who go back to the well and it doesn't work out for them, and this is about as clear of going back to the well as you can. And going back to the well doesn't have to be a bad thing. It's just that I think we have become rightly cynical in these situations for how many times this does happen in video games. But you look at some of that concept art, and man, like that does look fucking awesome. And like I'm a Mega Man 2 is like right up there with Deus Ex as like my favorite game of all time. So like the idea of getting like a really nice next gen one of these with like high res visuals, as much as I liked the nostalgic take of the last couple that Capcom worked on, those were neat sort of on their own. I mean, like, this is like the real deal. And I actually one of the things that I respect them for is they've been asked a bunch about for $2.5 million they will make 360, PS3, and Wii U versions. And nowhere on here does it mention anything about a PS4 and Xbox One version. And they were asked about that at PAX, and the response from Inafune was, well, we don't have those machines yet. We don't want to promise a stretch goal that we don't know how much it would cost to actually produce those, and that they would evaluate those platforms. This game, and they're not promising this game until 2015, right? Like so.
Right.
Most other times, if you saw a game of this scale on Kickstarter, like this is a game I would expect that they try and crank out in a year and promise sometime in 2014. And I think it's great that they're, maybe this is as a result of people having worked on a number of Mega Man games or people having worked on these sorts of projects in the past, but being able to at least give people like a proper estimate, right? I mean, like it's a little bit off-putting at first. You're like, well, 2015 is pretty far away, but I'd rather that be the upfront estimation rather than having 3 or 4 delays as they figure it out and go along.
I 100% agree. Moving on to the next thing, I don't think you and I got a chance to talk about this last week because I think it happened like either the day after our last show or what have you. I do want to talk a little bit about some of the Nintendo news that came around last week. So there were a few different things. First and foremost, the Wii U is now $50 cheaper, or at least it will be as of September 20th. It will now be a $299 system for the deluxe model. They didn't say anything about the other models, so I don't even know if they're still selling that one. In addition to that, they announced a Wind Waker bundle with some customized stuff and a couple of download codes that get you an art book as well as a copy of Wind Waker, I think like a solid 2 weeks before it comes out at retail. And then in addition to that, there's the 2DS, which exists. Patrick, my question to you is this. Ranking these news pieces on a scale of I'm very excited or to I don't know, I don't understand this and I don't care. Where do you rank these 3 pieces of news? What's most interesting to you, and what is the least interesting part of that bunch?
Well, so here's what I think is the most interesting part of that bunch is the Wind Waker HD is going to launch 2 weeks early digitally because I think that's really smart. I think that is properly leveraging the dynamic nature of a digital storefront to provide incentives to participate in that marketplace. This is, let's caveats up front. This is putting aside all sorts of huge grievances that I do have with the eShop. The account system is borked. The fact that it's not linked together, like all that stuff, put that aside. Like that, this is really smart, and this is a good way of, at least from Nintendo's perspective, pushing people, maybe over the brink a little early to go pick one up because there's a price cut, and I think it's smart all around, and I would like to see some more of that going forward. The price cuts, it's hard to say for me. That's, I already own one. I bought one at launch. That's really neither here nor there for me. I'll be curious to see how that pans out. I think the fact that they're not pairing a price cut with an ambassador program, and Steven Totillo actually had a chance to talk with Reggie Fils-Aimé about the 2DS and all these other moves, and specifically asked about an ambassador program, and said that this is a very different situation, and we don't plan to be offering something like that. And I do think it is different in that the price cut is coming later than I believe it came in the 3DS's timeline. I don't have the time in front of me, but at least it feels later. It doesn't feel as drastic and as crazy as it did with the 3DS.
Well, the 3DS was a really quick price cut, to be fair.
I want to say it was a lot faster. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's part of why the ambassador program existed. But I still think it has been completely crazy that they have not tried to do something, maybe not on the scale of the ambassador program, but in that same vein. I mean, we've seen what kind of goodwill that Sony has built up with PlayStation Plus and the free games on that. They're not free. You're paying for them, and they're locked up if you cancel PlayStation Plus. But they have this enormous library of games that people have bought a million times before that they could be using to incentivize people to purchase this machine, to use the machine they do own more often. And I don't know if it's politics or financial reasons that they're not engaging more with it, but that struck me as very disappointing, and I don't think their lineup over the next couple of months justifies not going the extra mile and trying to do something a little bit more to incentivize people to be playing with the Wii U.
I think Chris Kohler on Wired wrote something a couple months back before we sort of had a better sense of like what was coming for the Wii U, where and not that it's really improved that much, but he talked about how the Wii U really needs to just be a wonderland for Nintendo fans. It needs to be a system that is just, replete with all those old-ass Nintendo games that you love. The whole piecemeal thing just doesn't work anymore, like putting out 2 games a week and then expecting people just to keep, rapt attention from week to week waiting for, another version of Balloon Fight or whatever is just not going to cut it. And I think, like you said, the PlayStation Plus model where it's like it's subscription based, you pay, I don't know, whatever, however many bucks a month or a year, and you just get access to
$50 a year, I think, $50.
Yeah.
I just they gave out codes to everyone that went to their press conference 2 years ago, and then that expired like 4 weeks before their next one. They didn't give out more codes, and I would have happily paid at that point. But I was reminded how much of it cost because suddenly I got a, hey, we just charged your car $50. And I was like, oh, wait, really? Oh, that's right. That's that thing I paid for or didn't pay for, and now I'm paying for.
But I mean, a system like that on the Nintendo Wii U, where you could just subscribe for a similar price per year and just get access to some crazy array of Nintendo games, would be super rad.
It's too smart.
It's too smart for that. It would
make too much money because I now have a total policy with Nintendo machines going forward that I don't have a problem buying virtual console games that were not available any other way or weren't available on a previous platform. So like Earthbound, no problem getting that. That's a unique situation, and I want to support that. I want Nintendo to know that there is demand for this game, in addition to being able to have a chance to play it on a platform. But the idea that I'm going to buy like Super Mario 3 again or
Right.
Link to the Past. Like I'm not going to support that with my money because I think it's absurd that it just gets trotted out again and again. And I realize there are some technical reasons, like the way the emulation occurs on the Wii U is different than how it occurs on the 3DS. That sort of is irrelevant to me because if they had, you know, accounts that talk to each other, and this is going to be when what's going to be really interesting is eventually they are going to have accounts that talk to each other. I actually believe them based on their most recent a quote from some Nintendo of America representative that says that they're just not technically in a position to do it yet. I sort of believe them on that front. I'm not cynical enough to believe that they're pushing that back just because it would force them into a weird position. I think they maybe just are not competent enough to pull that off yet. But when they are and when that does exist, what they do with some of these games you can buy on both platforms, whether they try and find any way to integrate the two, is going to be really interesting because it rubs up against their business model in a pretty fascinating fashion. And I've always said that Nintendo is not a cynical company and that usually errs on the side of not exploiting you, but this is going to be a situation where, like, my faith in them and that they will do the right thing there will pretty much be tested, and I'm curious to see what they end up doing.
Yeah, and I mean, to be fair, I don't necessarily get the impression that a lot of people at Nintendo actually talk to each other, so it doesn't surprise me that they can't make their systems and devices talk to each other either. So, the last thing I will say on this, just my own sort of ranking of the news, I'm with you. I think the digital Wind Waker thing is by far the most interesting out of all of this. I like the idea that Nintendo might start pushing some of these games digitally ahead of retail release. It seems like they kind of tested that a little bit with the Luigi DLC to see if people would, kind of go for the digital model on that, or if they would revert or rely on the retail copy of that to get it. Far as I know, the digital numbers on that, not that Nintendo releases any of that stuff, but like a lot of people bought that DLC when it was out digitally first. So I imagine they're probably expecting the same thing with Wind Waker. As far as the other stuff goes, I think the Wii U price drop is totally a sensible move. The 2DS thing is the thing that's the least interesting to me, but it's also the thing least targeted at me.
It's for kids, and I fully believe that. And I have talked to, while we were at PAX and some other folks, some sources of mine, of how big of an issue the 3D stuff is, and it is severely understated in sort of public discourse how much of a hindrance the 3D has actually been. Due to the health warning that has to be mentioned there, that actually more parents than you would think take really seriously, even though that's just meant to be sort of a general, don't let your kid look at 3D all day. It could potentially have some adverse reactions, as it has had to a small minority of the population. But when they do focus tests and other things for 3DS games, that 3D is off. So 3D has become so far out of the equation that I'm not sure people even think of the 3D as what it was when it was originally shown as, Avatar and this other, it's gotten so far away from what it was originally pitched as that, and I don't think the 2DS is going to have the same branding problem that the Wii and the Wii U has, because basically, a retailer or anyone that tries to be remotely informed will just realize it's a cheaper version of the 3DS that plays all of those games, as opposed to, the Wii U, which is a more expensive, more complicated, doesn't play games in the same way unless you've kept those other remotes. Like I don't think it's going to be as big an issue as people are making it out to be.
I agree with you 100%.
So, all right. Another interesting bit that came out during PAX was that people were pretty they had mixed reactions when Gearbox announced that they had acquired the rights to the Homeworld IP, which I know are very cherished, very beloved RTS games that I've unfortunately never had a chance to play, but I was excited at the idea that maybe someone might be doing some updates to those classic games. I know that people were pretty skeptical that Gearbox was going to acquire them. They were happy they were going to make these HD versions of Homeworld 1 and 2, but they also left open the possibility they were going to work on more Homeworld games, and there is basically nothing about Gearbox that suggests they are equipped to be an RTS developer. And so hearing this weekend that they have actually essentially are working with, acquired, I don't know exactly how it would break down business-wise, but there was people that worked on the original Homeworld games were making a spiritual successor, and instead of just letting that go off and be a spiritual successor, Gearbox has now signed a deal to work with them, and it's called Homeworld Shipbreakers, and will actually be like part of the canonical universe and part of what Gearbox is doing. And that just seems, as much as I give Gearbox shit sometimes, a lot of the Duke Nukem stuff that they've worked on, this is just a classy as hell move.
Yeah, I don't. I appreciate you bringing this up as news because me and Homeworld, I know like that much about Homeworld, so unfortunately I don't have like a whole lot going on there. But I do agree that is a pretty classy move, and I had exactly the same reservations you did in terms of like that studio taking over anything regarding that franchise. Because again, you just don't think about Gearbox as an RTS developer, or especially something as kind of like slow and kind of methodical and. All I remember about Homeworld was that Jason Ocampo, a former GameSpot PC editor, was super into that. And I remember watching, and I think Bob Kaliko also, and I watched them try playing that stuff before and just thinking, this is really pretty. I have no idea what's going on here. I have no idea what this game is about. It seemed like the kind of sort of complex but super interesting space, RTS type game that I understand why it has the rabid fan base it does. And then you look at a studio like Gearbox, who, I mean, other than Borderlands, let's be honest, they've been super mercenary the last, 5 years. There's been no, real reason to get... there was nothing there that would suggest that, Homeworld was something they were going to handle really, really well. I still think that there's, genuine reason for trepidation when it comes to some of this stuff, but it does seem like, at the very least, they do hold some reverence for the franchise. They do seem like they want something good to come out of this. And I totally approve of it. I just want to remind everyone, they also said they had a ton of reverence for Aliens. They had a ton of reverence for Duke Nukem. And granted, Duke Nukem was its own unfixable mess to begin with.
Sure.
But let's not forget about the many years they said about how much they loved Aliens before Aliens Colonial Marines came out. Just throwing that out there.
Yeah. Yep.
I don't want to be cynical about it. I'm just saying. Saying.
Yep. No, I'm with you. Well, what I'm going to at least mention now as we go through, there's the last bits of news that there is, that if people want to shoot questions over, just at me in the chat, at Patrick Klepek. And because I've had a couple people mention this to me, if you seem to be watching this on YouTube, because we do this through Google+, we don't really monitor that chat, so if you wanted to ask questions, you got to be in Giant Bomb's chat, so giantbomb.com/chat, because that's the only one we're paying attention to while we do this show. So
cool.
Just a heads up. What do you got on your end?
Before we get into the tiny headlines, I did want to talk a little bit about PAX.
Okay.
Since we were there and stuff happened
there.
There were a lot of games there. It was a good show, like a really good lineup. I'm kind of curious what some of the stuff you played that stood out most to you was.
Well, let's see. So people will get a better sense of that when the panel goes up later this week,
right?
Which Drew shot, and then he'll edit it.
Call this the quick version of it.
Yeah. But it was just because people have been asking too. It'll go up sometime this week. Putting together that panel is not as simple as just downloading the footage and uploading it to our website, because it's shot on 2 different cameras and he's got to balance the audio. So my guess is it will happen sometime this week, but
sure.
I would err on the side of sometime later this week. But Galaxy was certainly one of the more impressive games that I played. I got to play it before the show, and then just got to be excited for those guys that the reception seemed to be so positive. Galaxy is the new game from 17-bit. They're the guys that worked on Skulls of the Shogun for nearly 5 years, only to have that come out as the same week as Fire Emblem, and then have almost nobody care about it, despite it being a pretty solid and very funny strategy game. But Galaxy is their new project. They've been working on it for about a year. It's I guess top-down shooter. At least gives you a sense of the perspective, but it's kind of disingenuous to what is happening in the game as a whole. It's got a very Robotech, like TV show classic look and vibe and sense of humor. Where even like in the loading screens, it's got like this, like the red main character like in the ship, like going through like a warp, and then it also says like "we will be right back" as it gets prepared to launch you into the game. And it's just a lot of really cute touches like that. And you just said there's an enormous amount of. Oh, my dog is barking. Hey, Pixel. I don't even know what my dog's barking at. Who's out there? Hey, you. We're trying to do a morning show, all right? Keep it down.
I thought we were a professional organization.
Nope, absolutely
Clearly not.
Whatever.
Clearly
The chat's going to love that my dog just freaked out.
That's great.
And That just goes to show how excited people are for Galaxy. Is that when they hear it, they just want to express all of their excitement, and so you get dropped into these huge maps, and you have kind of some objectives that you can go after, like they were showing in the PAX demo. They had like 3 crystals to collect. But what was really fun was the combat, and the combat is extremely like. Now I'm watching the chat catch up to what just happened.
Yeah.
It's super distracting. I got to tab.
That dog is not a wolf, okay? That is a dog. Different.
A dog is the opposite of a wolf. Although she thinks in her head that she is.
Right.
And so it's very Halo-like in what it's set up as, in the sense that you have competing factions with different AI routines, and those AI routines interact with each other in some pretty interesting ways. And it can be as simple as you just go in there and you're fighting amongst them and they're kind of shooting at each other, or the most interesting scenarios I saw was so you have this bug faction, and the bugs are indiscriminate. So they will attack you, they'll attack the other factions, they don't care, they just want to kill whatever's in their path. And if you are smart enough, you can drag the bugs over to the other enemies, or you can drag the enemies over to the bugs, or you can just sort of like get in the mix in a battle that's already happening, and you can participate as much or as little as you want, and use those aspects to your advantage. And everything I heard from 17-bit was that is just the tip of the iceberg of what they want to happen with the combat in the final game. There are going to be multiple factions. There's going to be all sorts of environmental effects and enemies and unique scenarios in the different missions that allow you to pretty much be doing that on a moment-to-moment basis all the time. And that's what makes that game so much more than a top-down shooter, which is why it's kind of difficult to describe that game, because I feel like it sort of falls short in letting you know everything that is there.
Yeah, there's a lot going on with that game. I didn't get a chance to get my hands on it, unfortunately, but I watched Brad and I think either Vinny or Drew play a whole bunch of it, and yeah, I'm super on board with what those guys are doing. As far as my own stuff goes, just a quick rundown. As far as the big, AAA games go, that Titanfall demo impressed the hell out of me. I had not got my hands on it before. That was really fun, exciting stuff. It was kind of what I was hoping for as far as like the weird parkour stuff and the balancing between the Titans and the people goes. Like that stuff all seemed really, really well done, and I was pretty impressed with it. Smaller game-wise, I was, Galaxy was really cool. Audio Surf 2 was really cool. There were a couple of other things at Indie Mega Booth I would like to have played more, but man, that thing was thick with motherfucking people.
It was, and that could not have made me happier, because, at a show like that, to have that much foot traffic for games that don't, have a marketing budget or largely do not have PR people to help them coordinate, to meet people like us, just to have that and have that be, what constantly seemed like one of the busiest parts of that show was just so freaking cool to see. I was just so happy for that community.
Totally. The one I will say that I think I was most intrigued by was Lovers in a Dangerous Space Time.
Right.
Which is one of the PAX 10 games. It's a co-op game, space game kind of thing. Looked super hectic, and that seemed really interesting to me. That's the kind of like co-op game I think me and my girlfriend could totally get into, because it would just be us yelling at each other a whole lot as we tried to maintain the ship's continued existence. It seemed really fun. The one I didn't get to play that I really wanted to, and it seemed like either the build was broken or they were doing some sort of film thing every time I walked over, was Jazzpunk. I heard nothing but good things about Jazzpunk, and I wanted to play Jazzpunk, but I did not get the chance. Did you get a chance to play that?
I briefly watched by it, but there was kind of a line to check it out. That was constantly seemed like perhaps Vinny's game of the show. It's part of Adult Swim's lineup. I'm not. I guess we could look. I'm not clear if it was a game that is out right now. Jazzpunk game. I'm looking right now. If I click on Jazzpunk, where is this logo going to take me? Coming soon. Okay, so not out yet, but if you go to necrophonegames.com, there's a trailer. I don't know, maybe I'll pull that down and put it up on the site, given that that's one of the games that Vinny could not stop talking about. But it was it seemed very funny and strange in I don't even know how you would describe, like, what you would compare it to.
Yeah, I everything I heard about it made it just sound completely bonkers, but like perhaps in the best way possible. So I'm super curious if about what it's all about. But basically all I heard was a bunch of weird, disparate, things happening that didn't something about throwing popcorn at people and then smoking a cigar in a movie theater, and I didn't really understand what anything had to do with anything else, but it all sounded kind of weird, but in a way that I could totally get behind. So I want to play that.
Yeah, I'm definitely with you there. There were plenty of games there that I immediately talked to the developers and were like, hey, we're going to talk after PAX, because doing interviews and things like that in that area was not possible. At least to do stuff on video. So we have an idea for something we want to do that is the equivalent of. So the weird thing is about the sort of the PAX roundup, or I guess like the indie roundups that Ryan used to do at PAX, is that the PAX 10 has increasingly become games that are already out and games we've already covered. So. Right. Even when we were thinking about how to handle it this year, we still wanted to do that because it was always a very popular feature. But the PAX 10 didn't make a lot of sense this year. And then the Mega Booth was just so many games, so you can't do all of those the way you could do the PAX 10. And then it was so packed that the way we used to even film it just did not seem possible. But we have kind of come up with an idea of how we might handle that. So I guess stay tuned for that, and know that we have not ignored what was one of the more popular video features that came out of PAX.
For sure.
Let's see. Small headline, unless you've got anything else big.
Steam has greenlighted over 100 games, including Shadows of the Eternals? How do you feel about that?
It probably had enough popular support to at least be given the ability to show up on that service if it does get made. Nothing about greenlight has anything to do with your ability to get it made. Maybe that's a factor, but I don't necessarily blame Valve for saying if this is a game that actually got developed, would there be interest? Like, yeah, there would be interest. So. Yeah, I mean, good for them. I think they used that to celebrate their first year anniversary of Greenlight. Yeah. That seems like a good way to do that.
They also dropped prices on a bunch of other Greenlight games that were already out. So.
Oh, cool. Let's see, Broken Age, getting Jack Black and Jennifer Hale as voice actors.
Good to know that Tim Schafer has maintained that Jack Black friendship over the years. When I was quick aside story, when I was working for Harmonix, I was doing an EA event in the UK right around the time he was doing heavy press tours for Brutal Legend. So he and I and a bunch of other developers ended up hanging out and talking about stuff. And apparently at the end of that trip, Tim and his wife were going to go spend 2 weeks in France with Jack Black and his wife, just hang out. They were just going to go party together in France, which I thought was pretty great.
That's pretty good.
Those guys can just go hang out now.
Let's see.
Uwe Boll is back in the news.
I don't know what you're talking about. No idea what you're talking about. No, he's not.
Yeah,
no, he's not.
Yeah, he is. Didn't you email him, Patrick?
I don't know. I did not do an interview live on the site, impromptu, with Uwe Boll, or I might have. I wasn't recording it, so I need to go and see if I can pull down that video and see if that audio is workable. But I also kind of like the idea that maybe it just happened and we just move on with our lives.
It's like a weird fever dream moment.
And if you were there, then you got to see it, and maybe that's it. I don't know. I don't know how I feel. There are some unique details about how that interview was conducted that I don't know if I necessarily want archived on the site. So
sure.
I'll have to think about it. But yeah, that did happen, and he's raising money, and he's not going to hit his goal. So
probably not. And he's going to blame everyone when that happens.
Yeah, blame the Hollywood establishment and Obama's foreign policy. There's a whole lot of things that man would be prepared to blame.
Totally.
Let's see. PS4 to support voice commands recognition with camera. Let's see. This is a story I saw over on Joystick. The PlayStation 4 will support navigational voice commands and facial recognition to the PlayStation camera, which was then confirmed by Polygon. Checking in with a spokesperson, and said there will be details shared in the lead up to the launch of PlayStation 4. I guess that's interesting. They have a device that can, who knows how well it will work, who knows how well the new Kinect works until we have a chance to really sit down with the final software. But it wouldn't surprise me that they're looking at trying to match them them being Microsoft, as close to 1-to-1 as possible, even if they're not bundling that camera. If that's not a huge software engineering effort for them, if you can tick that box, why wouldn't you? So, I guess it's interesting, but I didn't use that voice stuff too much on my 360, and I think it could be interesting, but I'm not convinced I'm necessarily going to use it.
How do you feel about the various regions being cut down as far as voice chat and voice commands go on, not voice chat, voice commands on the Xbox One? It's now only the US, Canada, UK, France, and Germany at launch.
I mean,
Australian English is too hard for the system to understand at this point, so they can't let that happen yet.
I mean, if you think about it, if this is launch rush stuff, what's worse for them? Cutting it out and dealing with the bad press that comes from cutting it out, or endless YouTube videos and press requests asking why it can't differentiate an Australian accent and can't do anything. So I think they're just, at this point, taking the small bad press to avoid the bigger bad press for what's going to be one of their big features, differentiators at launch. Whether you agree with it's a good differentiator, that is one of their key ones when these machines launch in November. So I think they're just making sure that what is going to be out there works, and they know it works, and they can be confident it works, at least to the ability that they want it to. So I think it's disappointing. I think it is indicative of how fragile a lot of this stuff is in the run-up to launch. But, I have to imagine they just did sort of a worst-case scenario estimation and decided that they'd rather just take the hit up front. So
yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
Well, shall we get into the question stuff?
Yeah.
Any other headlines?
Yeah, let's see. Let's see what we got in questions. Humanity asked, "Did you get your Machine for Pigs codes yet?" Yes, I did get codes for the new
Did you
Amnesia.
have the balls to download it?
Oh, I am not going to explain a panel joke right now, especially one that comes at my expense. So you can watch the panel and find out what that means. But yeah, I have codes for Amnesia. Machine for Pigs comes out next week. Still figuring out exactly how coverage of that will go. Outlast comes out today or tomorrow. I'm not sure. That's another horror game. It was one of the ones that got a lot of attention at E3 on the PS4, but the PC version comes out this week, and I will for sure be taking a look at that this week, and there will be a Spookin' with Scoops later this week as well. But if there is a quick look, whether that comes from me or the guys in San Francisco, that will be separate from Spookin' with Scoops, so you don't need to be a premium member to at least see what that game is.
Rory and I want to have you on the movie podcast next month once all the horror movies start coming out, so we can start talking about some horror stuff.
Is there that much coming up in October?
There's a couple of things. I mean, Insidious will have already been out for a little while, but there's another Paranormal Activity. There
isn't.
One or two others. There isn't? I thought there was this year.
Nope. They delayed.
Really?
They delayed Paranormal Activity 5. Is that? Are we up to 5? 5.
Yes, it would be 5.
5 until next October.
Really?
And the spin-off that is supposed to be focused on the Hispanic audience, which these found footage ghost films, this is getting into demographic territory. These sorts of ghost stories tend to do very, very well in Hispanic communities and Hispanic parts of the world. I guess The Little Red Red was like just based on their own cultures. These just tend to be very popular. So they were doing a spin-off that's related with more of those histories. That one will be coming out next spring. I forget what the name has. It's called the Paranormal Activity something something something. But yeah, there is no Paranormal Activity this October. Like October's pretty light, given that The Conjuring came out this summer. Insidious Chapter 2 comes out this month in September.
You know what? Then we can have you come on and talk about like Netflix stuff, whatever it is you're watching on there. Because Rory and I just want someone to talk about horror movies with us, because it can't just be us.
No, I would be happy. I would be happy to do that. And I do have some plans to do some more expansive horror stuff throughout October. I'm still I'm figuring out what that is. But look forward to that, I suppose.
Terrific.
One of the rumor headlines going around this morning, and I feel okay addressing rumor stuff on this show because we do it a couple times a week, is there's some reports of perhaps Sony announcing a VR headset at TGS. and doing something similar to the Oculus Rift. There's also, I guess, some rumblings that they've been looking to do a partnership with Oculus. I think the idea of a partnership with a hardware manufacturer is a really interesting idea. I think, from what I know technically about the way Oculus works, is that because of the two eyes, it has to render it twice.
Right.
So that is more difficult on a console, where you're then looking at having to make a game 60 frames a second, and so that you can get 230 frames per second. That I may be butchering that, but I know that it's more of a technical feat on the PC, and it would be an interesting challenge on the consoles. But I would love to see the console guys get into this. I would like to see this go on beyond the PC, so whether that happens through the Oculus or whether that happens through Sony doing their own thing, that all sounds rad to me. I don't know about you.
I think that it would be a strange move for Sony to do it on their own. I think with all the hardware stuff that they're already working on right now, it seems like it would be kind of an ill-conceived move for them to also add, their own VR headset on top of that. If they were in fact to partner up with the Oculus people, that would make a ton of sense, because they have so much goodwill already engendered from the gaming audience at this point. People are kind of very, very excited about the retail model of that, whenever the hell that's going to come out. Getting on board with those guys and getting support for that system early on would be a huge boon for them. Doing their own thing, I'm not saying I don't trust Sony to make decent hardware, because they've made plenty of decent hardware over the years. I just don't think that's one of those things they would really like to throw on their plate, in addition to manufacturing the PlayStation 4 and those cameras and those controllers and everything else going on with that stuff.
Let's see. Feather Dave asks, upon seeing that Double Fine is doing DLC for the PS4 Playroom, which is Sony's bundled-in camera software.
It's a free program, right?
Yep. How is Microsoft not throwing tons of money at devs to make content for Kinect 2.0? They haven't done much to argue for using it. Is that your feeling as well, Alex?
Yeah, because other than Fantasia, what other Kinect-oriented games have you really seen heavily promoted for the Xbox One? It's originally Rise was supposed to be an original Kinect thing, and then they bumped it up to Xbox One, and in the process of that, turned it into more of a QuickTime-y thing than a Kinect-oriented thing. I'm sitting here I'm running down I'm thinking of the launch games, and it's there's maybe some Kinect functionality in some of that stuff, but there's nothing that's really super focused on that. It feels like the Kinect conversation is just a little bit dead. Just nobody seems that interested in it. Nobody seems that excited about it. I haven't heard anyone walk up to me and say, "Yeah, no, I've got this really exciting Kinect thing I want to show you," in ages. And I think that's because, other than the Harmonix people who have sort of embraced that motion gaming stuff for their various rhythmic purposes, no one else really seems to have any noteworthy ideas as to what to do with that thing. And the ideas that have been coming out, especially since the last run of Kinect games for the Xbox 360, haven't been very good. I can name maybe 4 Kinect games that were kind of good, and the rest that were all ranging from it's all right to, man, this is just fucking broken. Someone saying Fighters Within is also a Kinect game, but that's fine. I know next to nothing about that game, to be honest with you. So
I think it's a Ubisoft thing.
It is.
But I can say that at one point Microsoft was making a pretty big financial investments and bets in expanding the types of games you normally would see on Kinect with the Kinect 2.0, if that's what we're calling it, games that were going to come out for the Xbox One. And then earlier this year, they did a substantial culling of the games that they were partnering with to make, and not a significant amount of them were Kinect projects, as they sort of made a decision to sort of a little more laser focus on what the expectation should be for the kinds of games that are made for that, and whether it made a whole lot of sense to actually be making more quote-unquote real games, or what our understanding is and expectations are for those types of games, and instead to maybe just focus on what's worked, Kinect Sports, and maybe we'll get a Just Dance or something along those lines, because it doesn't appear that. It's super surprised that Harmonix is not making another Dance Central, but that that may have
will eventually.
That may have more to do with with Microsoft, and that may have to do with Harmonix's desire to make another one.
They're going to make another one at some point. I think they
Yeah.
just didn't want to try and like rush something together for a system launch for this one. I think they wanted to take a quick break, which I think is totally admirable considering they did 3 in 3 years. So, you know.
All right, so a lot of people are asking about this. We're not going to get into it a whole lot
I know what you're going to ask.
here because I've not had enough of a chance to take a look at it and sort of formulate my thoughts on it. But obviously, there has been some conversation about some comments from Penny Arcade co-founder Mike Kulick, specifically in regards to the Dick Wolves controversy that has continued to surround that group. The little I've seen of it, I will characterize my response as disappointing. But anything beyond that, I would have to do some more research on that and not be too reactionary about it. But a lot of people are asking, people are talking about it on Twitter this morning. I have in the past expressed my disappointment at how Krahulik has handled himself under criticism, and things like this don't make me feel any better about it.
I mean, the problem with this is that it's all anecdotal. There's no, like, he didn't make a public comment. This is someone saying they overheard him at PAX talking about it. Which,
this isn't a Twitch stream during their public Q&A.
Oh, was it in a Twitch stream?
Yeah.
Okay,
So there is something that I need to look at to get a better sense of.
Well, in that case, that is a more public comment, and that is something worth looking into, I suppose. I mean, for me, it's just like, I've already decided that guy and I don't see eye to eye on much of anything, so, I stopped following him. I don't really pay any attention to what he has to say or do anymore, because if I do, it's just going to make me kind of upset and unhappy, it sounds like. So I've kind of excised his perspective from my view these days, and I think I'm just going to kind of keep that up.
Yeah. Let's see, what else we got? Did you read anything about this Microsoft Nokia stuff? I don't know.
I looked at it a little bit last night as I was going to bed.
Okay. I don't know. I guess the sense that it was, maybe this gives us an idea. I guess they're buying their home mobile unit, right? Or something like that.
Yeah, so they're buying their entire devices unit. They're basically buying the whole section of the company that makes the phones and what have you. And then it sounds like they are licensing their patents and some of their other stuff. It basically sounds like they are going to just, Nokia is now the Windows phone all that manufacturing and devices stuff now is under the Microsoft purview. That is all I was able really to get from that last night.
And I guess then the little bit of chatter I saw from some of the tech people that I follow was that this may give us a better sense of who the CEO is going to be. But we barely are any good at covering video games as opposed to reading too much into tech acquisitions. What that is going to mean. Yeah, I was Stephen Elop, if I am pronouncing that correctly, I guess, is the guy that is being pegged as potentially the new CEO to follow Ballmer as a result of this news. I don't know. Not seeing too much else. Some people are asking. I mentioned at PAX and while on Twitter and stuff that I'm giving a TEDx talk in October.
What's that all about? What did you pitch for that?
Yeah. So the story is that I think was a fan of the site, is helping organize a TEDx conference in October 19th at Dearborn, which I believe is a university. And so TEDx is separate than TED, right? Like, so TED is like the main TED conferences where J.J. Abrams and people like that go to give like these really big talks, where he gave like the famous like mystery box talk. And then there's TEDx, which are these individual more group conferences that can take place in universities or in cities, and the scale of them can range all over the place. These can be ones that are, like broadcast on live streams, and I don't have a good sense of what this one is. I can give people more details when I know more about that myself. This could just be a bunch of people in a garage, for all I know. But someone reached out to me and asked me to pitch and said, we can't guarantee you'll get picked because the guy who reached out is not the guy who picks that, but he gave me the link to pitch, and I thought, why the hell not? I've never done anything like this before. I've been on panels. I've written stories. I've never really given sort of a presentation of something that I've come up with. So I thought the exercise of even just trying to break one down in my head would be fascinating in and of itself. But then I also was just really confident that it wasn't going to get picked, so I would never have to go to the next step of actually writing it and then having to worry about having to give it.
Isn't it funny how that works out? You assume that it's just a dumb shot in the dark and it's not going to happen, and then suddenly, oh hey, no, yeah, you're in, you're committed to this, so now you have to do it.
Yeah. So that sort of bummed me out and got me really excited at the same time. But so when I pitched them, but what I pitched them was so after sort of Phil Fish canceled Fez 2, and I wrote a story about what it's like to be a public figure, sort of the tensions between being a public figure and people that sort of consume the work that you create, and I extrapolated that into a much larger argument of the fact that, by and large, we are all public figures in some capacity. There are some of us that take our Facebook and our Twitter privacy controls very seriously, but by and large, most of us just let all of our stuff kind of float out into the ether, and the transaction there is that we get enough back from being sort of public figures and selling our public currency. But then when stuff like that goes wrong, what does that mean? And I feel like as someone that has done that sort of on a daily basis for the last couple of years, and have certainly been in the middle of some firestorms, that there are maybe some lessons for me to pass on from that are applicable to a wider variety of people, because I think if you are on the internet, if you are on Twitter, even if you're only a guy with a couple followers, it's not that difficult to be caught in the middle of something really crazy, and then what do you do when your private life has suddenly become very public? And so I don't know exactly what that will turn into, but that's sort of the general thing that I pitched them, and then I'm going to turn that into some sort of talk, and then I'll just pay people to be in the audience and clap for me and pretend I am profound.
No, I like it. I think that's a cool idea. I mean, that's one of those things that has always kind of been a weird struggle for me. And any sort of perspective on like that Phil Fish piece to me was super interesting, because it was sort of an interesting examination of the the kind of weird, not so much politics, but the kind of the interactions and the sort of the way people can be when they are presented with a personality who they don't necessarily view as a person so much, and the way that they feel like they can talk to people like that. So it's a thing that has always kind of driven me crazy, and has kept me from feeling completely at home and comfortable, doing work on the internet and stuff. And I'm very curious to see what you come up with this.
I can hear you.
Or to seeing your TED talk. That will be the first TED talk I ever watch. Straight up.
Also, I can hear your phone ringing.
My phone. Oh.
Bzzz. I just let it go. I just
just moved it away.
But yeah. So for me, this is not a talk about Phil Fish.
Right.
At most, it will be a footnote to explain how I kind of got off on this tangent. But you're right. It is about that. Also, that tension between people not necessarily recognizing people that they talk about or yell things at as actual people. And so I don't know. So I'm still kind of figuring out what my sort of thesis statement is there. But that'll be on October 19th. I think people can buy tickets. I don't know, but I will let people know more information as I know it. But I think with that, do you have anything going on this week? Like, what are you got? Rayman Legends.
Yeah,
right?
I've been playing through Rayman Legends mostly on the Vita, but I got the Wii U version as well. That game is awesome.
Yeah, you spent your flight playing that, right?
Yeah, I spent most of my flight. I straight up drained the battery entirely on my Vita playing that on the plane. So that game is real good. I will have a review of that. If not today, then probably tomorrow. But my immediate reaction to that game is go buy it.
Okay.
I will finally get around to doing that Bombastic video I said I was going to do last week for Virtual Pro Wrestling 2 this week. I wanted to do that. I'm going to go see some Warner Brothers games on Wednesday. Batman will be there, as well as that DC Scribblenauts game, and I don't know, something else that I can't remember offhand. And then I'm getting a cavity filled.
Oh, awesome. Are you going to live stream it?
No, my dentist is kind of weird about that. I asked, but he wasn't really feeling that idea, so sorry.
God,
Sorry.
Damn it.
Yeah.
Okay, so
I'm gonna get some new ones soon. Don't worry.
Okay, good. So I'll have a series of interviews going up throughout the week. Oh, there goes your phone again.
I got it.
You should just answer that phone call.
No, I'm not answering this phone call yet. I'm not doing that.
It's Phil Fish calling. And yeah, so I'll be putting a bunch of interviews throughout the week. I've got I think 6 or 7 that I conducted that didn't have a chance to edit and put up on the site. So those will go up throughout the week. I'll have Spookin' with Scoops at some point. Then yeah, right. I think Vinny is out of the office. I'm sure they will record a podcast today. And I'm sure there'll be an Unprofessional Fridays, but outside of that, it might be sort of a slow week. But there are certainly plenty of games coming out, so look forward to some of that. But yeah,
Games,
cool. Well, I'm glad you woke up.
Yeah, no, I'm glad I woke up too. That was good. That needed to happen for a show to happen.
It did. All right. Well, you go do your thing. You go play Rayman, while the rest of us wish we were playing Rayman. And I will talk to you on Friday.
I'll see you then, man.
All right, bye.